The Great Hall of Concordance Station was the largest structure ever built by living beings. It floated in the empty space between galaxies, a crystal palace that stretched for thousands of kilometers. Inside its walls, the representatives of 4,000 alien species gathered to decide the fate of worlds. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the center of this hall. She was 63 years old, with gray hair and calm brown eyes. Behind her stood 12 other humans, the entire diplomatic team that had traveled for 6 months to reach this place. Around them rose tier after tier of alien delegates. Some had scales. Some had wings. Some were made of light or shadow, or things that human eyes could not fully understand. Elena had prepared for this moment her entire life. Humanity had worked for 80 years to earn a seat at this table. They had crawled between the stars using slow fusion engines, while other species jumped through hyperspace in seconds. They had colonized 17 worlds through blood and sacrifice. Millions had died in the cold void between planets. But they had survived. They had grown. And now they had come to ask for what every spacefaring species received: the right to use hyperspace and join galactic civilization. The quorum speaker floated at the highest point of the hall. It was an ancient being, part machine and part something else entirely. Its body was made of metal and crystal, and it had existed for longer than humans had walked upright on Earth. When it spoke, its voice filled every corner of the massive chamber. The species known as humanity has requested hyperspace transit rights, the speaker announced. The council will now deliver its judgment. Elena felt her heart beating fast, but she kept her face still. She had learned long ago that aliens watched human expressions very carefully. They found humans difficult to read, and Elena wanted to keep it that way. The council has reviewed humanity's history, the speaker continued. Your species has been studied for 300 of your years. We have observed your wars. We have recorded your violence. We have measured your genetic diversity, which falls outside acceptable parameters. We have noted your refusal to adopt neural standardization, which makes you incompatible with concordance communication systems. Elena said nothing. She simply listened. The council's decision is unanimous, the speaker said. Humanity's request for hyperspace transit rights is denied. A sound moved through the hall. It was not quite laughter, but something close to it. 4,000 species watched the small group of humans standing alone on the chamber floor. The speaker was not finished. Humanity will be permitted to keep its 17 colony worlds. A quarantine sphere will be established around your territory. No hyperspace traffic will be permitted within this sphere. No trade will be conducted with human worlds. No contact will occur beyond observation. This is for your protection and for the protection of the galaxy. Elena understood perfectly. They were being locked in a cage. The council was using pretty words, but the meaning was clear. Humanity would be trapped in a tiny corner of the galaxy, watching other species fly past them like gods while humans crawled between their few worlds on their slow, primitive ships. The other human delegates looked at Elena. Some of them were angry. Some were afraid. But they all waited for her to speak. She took a step forward. Her voice was calm and clear when she spoke. "May I ask a question?" The quorum speaker tilted its ancient head. "You may. What happens if we refuse these terms?" The sound that moved through the hall this time was definitely laughter. It came from hundreds of different species in hundreds of different forms. The idea that humanity could refuse the council's judgment was amusing to them. It was like watching an insect threaten a mountain. The speaker answered with something that might have been patience. Refusal is not possible. The council's word is law. It is enforced by the combined military strength of the concordance. Your 17 worlds have a total population of 4 billion. The concordance commands fleets that could burn those worlds to ash in a single day. Refusal would mean extinction. Elena nodded slowly. She looked around the great hall, taking in the thousands of alien faces watching her. Some looked curious. Some looked bored. None of them looked worried. She smiled. It was a small smile, just a slight curve of her lips. But something about it made the nearest alien delegate shift uncomfortably in their seats. Humans smiled when they were happy, but they also smiled at other times, and the aliens had never quite figured out what those other smiles meant. Then humanity formally withdraws its application, Elena said. We will not accept your protection. We will not live inside your quarantine. We will find our own way. The quorum speaker was silent for a long moment. You cannot refuse. We just did. Elena turned to her diplomatic team. We're leaving? She walked toward the exit. The other humans followed her. 4,000 alien species watched in confused silence as the small group of humans left the greatest hall in the galaxy without looking back. That night, a message went out to every human being on every colony world. It traveled on the old, slow communication systems that humanity still used. It reached every ship, every station, every settlement where humans lived. The message was simple. Come home. We have work to do. On Earth, the leaders of humanity gathered in an underground chamber that had been prepared for this possibility. They had hoped for acceptance. They had planned for rejection. Elena Vasquez stood before them, still wearing her diplomatic uniform. They gave us a cage, she said. They expect us to accept it. They expect us to slowly fade away in our little corner of the galaxy while they rule the stars. She looked around the room at the faces of presidents, generals, scientists, and engineers. I say we give them a surprise. I say we build something they have never seen before. I say we stop trying to join their civilization and start building our own. One of the generals spoke up. They have hyperspace. They have fleets that could destroy us. Yes, Elena agreed. So we need something they don't have. Something they can't imagine. Something that will make hyperspace look like a children's toy. A scientist named Yuki Tanaka raised her hand. She was young, barely 30, with sharp eyes and a mind that never stopped working. I have an idea, she said. It is probably impossible. But I have an idea. Elena smiled again. Then let's get started. The galaxy had spoken. Humanity had listened. And then humanity had decided to do something about it. 50 years passed in silence. The Galactic Council placed observation drones around the quarantine sphere. These machines watched every human world, recorded every ship movement, and listened for every radio signal. For the first few years, they detected the usual activity. Ships moved between colonies. Messages traveled back and forth. Humans continued their slow, crawling existence among their 17 worlds. Then everything stopped. The radio signals went quiet. The ships stopped moving. The human colonies showed signs of life, but whatever the humans were doing, they were doing it in secret. The observation drones saw cities lit up at night. They detected heat from factories and power plants. But they heard nothing and understood nothing. The council was not worried. They had seen this pattern before. Aggressive species, when faced with isolation, often turned their anger inward. They fought among themselves. They destroyed their own civilization. In a few hundred years, the humans would probably be extinct, or they would evolve into something more peaceful and manageable. The galaxy moved on. Wars were fought. Treaties were signed. New species rose to power while old ones faded away. Nobody thought much about the strange, violent creatures trapped in their tiny corner of space. Inside the quarantine sphere, humanity was very busy indeed. Yuki Tanaka was now the director of Project Prometheus. She was 80 years old, but advances in medicine had kept her body strong and her mind sharp. She stood in a control room buried deep beneath the surface of Mars, watching data scroll across holographic displays. Around her worked the greatest minds humanity had ever produced. Every scientist, every engineer, every brilliant thinker from all 17 worlds had been brought together for a single purpose. They had been working on this project for 50 years, and they were finally close to success. The idea had come from Yuki herself during that first meeting after humanity's rejection. The Council had locked them away from hyperspace. They had surrounded humanity with barriers that could not be crossed. But barriers worked both ways. Inside their cage, humanity could do whatever they wanted without anyone watching. "If they will not let us travel to the stars," Yuki had said, "then we will make new stars. We will bring them to us." The other scientists had laughed at first. Creating a star was impossible. Stars were born from vast clouds of gas that collapsed over millions of years. No technology could speed up that process. The energy required was beyond anything humanity could produce. But Yuki had not given up. She had gathered the best physicists in human space and put them to work. They invented new mathematics. They built machines that could manipulate matter at the atomic level. They created artificial intelligence systems that could calculate faster than any human brain. The project consumed everything. Entire moons were dismantled to build massive particle accelerators. Whole economies were redirected toward a single goal. Every human being understood what was at stake. They were not building a weapon. They were building a key that would open every door in the galaxy. And now, after 50 years, they were ready to test it. Yuki watched as technicians made final adjustments to the equipment. In the display before her, she could see the target, a massive gas giant at the edge of human territory. It was a failed star, a planet that had almost become a sun but had never quite ignited. It was the perfect test subject. "Director," one of her assistants said, "all systems are ready. We can begin when you give the order." Yuki took a deep breath. She thought about Elena Vasquez, who had died 20 years ago, still believing that humanity would find a way. She thought about the billions of humans who had worked their whole lives for this moment. She thought about the alien council that had dismissed humanity as primitive and dangerous. "Begin," she said. Across the empty space between planets, a beam of energy shot toward the gas giant. It was not ordinary energy. It was something new, something that human scientists had created through decades of research. It was compressed matter and focused radiation and quantum effects that even Yuki did not fully understand. It punched through the gas giant's outer layers and reached deep into its core. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the planet's core began to change. Atoms that had been stable for billions of years suddenly found themselves under impossible pressure. Hydrogen atoms slammed together and became helium. The fusion reaction spread outward like a wave of fire moving through dry grass. The gas giant ignited. Where there had been a dark, cold planet, now there was a small, stable star. It was not as bright as the sun that warmed Earth, but it was real. It was burning. It was impossible. Yuki watched the data come in. The new star was stable. It would burn for millions of years. They had done it. They had created fire in the darkness. Tears rolled down her face. She did not bother to wipe them away. "Send the signal," she said. "Tell everyone. Tell them we have light." Across human space, the news spread within hours. People gathered to watch as the new star became visible in their night skies. They had been told that this might happen, but seeing it was different from hearing about it. A new star, a human-made sun, something that the galaxy said was impossible. On Earth, celebrations erupted in every city. People danced in the streets and wept with joy. They had been trapped in darkness for 50 years, and now They had made their own light. But Yuki was not celebrating. She was already planning the next phase. One star was not enough. They needed more. They needed to turn their prison into a palace of light. They needed to show the galaxy what humanity could do when it was pushed into a corner. Over the next 5 years, 17 more gas giants were ignited across human space. Each one became a new sun. Each one warmed new worlds that had been too cold for life. The quarantine sphere that had been humanity's cage was becoming something else entirely. It was becoming a beacon. And soon, the rest of the galaxy would see it burning. The astronomer's name was Crick 7, and it had spent its entire career studying the boring section of space where humanity lived. The Veluxy hegemony had assigned Cricks to watch the quarantine zone as a punishment for a minor political mistake. It was the most tedious job in the entire hegemony. Nothing ever happened in human space. The primitive creatures just sat there in their tiny corner of the galaxy, slowly dying. Then, one night, something appeared that should not exist. Cricks checked its instruments 3 times. It ran diagnostic programs. It called in other astronomers to verify what it was seeing. But the readings did not change. A new star had appeared in the quarantine zone. Not a supernova. Not a variable star increasing its brightness. A completely new star, burning where nothing had existed before. "This is impossible," Crick said. Then a second star appeared. And a third. And more kept appearing over the following months until the quarantine zone was blazing, with light where darkness had ruled for billions of years. Crick sent an emergency report to the hegemony government. The hegemony sent the report to the Galactic Council. Within days, every species in the galaxy knew that something strange was happening in human space. The Council sent a fleet of research vessels to investigate. They kept their distance from the quarantine boundary, using long-range sensors to study the new stars. What they found made no sense to them. "These are artificial," the lead scientist reported. "These stars were created. They are stable and controlled. This should not be possible with any known technology." The quorum speaker received this report in the Great Hall of Concordance Station. The ancient being had not thought about humanity in decades. They were supposed to be a solved problem, a minor species locked away until they destroyed themselves. How did they accomplish this? The speaker demanded. "We do not know," the scientist admitted. "Our best theories suggest that they developed entirely new physics. They created technology that we have never seen before. They did this while under observation, without us noticing." The speaker felt something it had not experienced in a very long time. It felt worried. Then the message arrived. It came on every frequency, in every language, broadcast with enough power to reach every corner of the galaxy. It was a human voice, speaking with calm confidence. To the Galactic Council and all species of the Concordance. "This is Ambassador Elena Vasquez of the Human Collective." The speaker recognized that name. It was the human who had walked out of the Great Hall 50 years ago. The one who had smiled before leaving. 50 years ago, you judged us unworthy," the message continued. "You locked us in darkness and expected us to fade away. Instead, we have been busy. We have made new stars. We have developed technologies that your scientists cannot explain. We have turned your cage into our laboratory." Across the galaxy, trillions of beings listened to these words. Some were curious. Some were afraid. Some were angry that a primitive species dared to speak to the Concordance this way. "You gave us a choice between submission and extinction. We chose a third option. We chose to become something new. And now we are coming out. The quarantine ends today. Not because you permit it, but because we no longer recognize your authority to impose it." The message gave coordinates. A point in neutral space, far from any inhabited world. Humanity would demonstrate its capabilities there. Any species that wished to witness this demonstration was welcome to attend. The council debated for 6 hours. Some wanted to ignore the message. Some wanted to send a massive fleet to destroy humanity before they became a threat. Some wanted to negotiate. In the end, they chose a middle path. They would send 12 battle fleets to the coordinates. Enough firepower to destroy 100 worlds. If humanity's demonstration was a threat, they would respond with overwhelming force. If it was a bluff, they would expose human weakness for the entire galaxy to see. The 12 fleets arrived at the coordinates on the appointed day. They found empty space. No human ships were visible. The fleet commanders began to wonder if this was some kind of trick. Then space itself tore open. A hole appeared in the fabric of reality. It was not hyperspace. It was something else, something new. Light poured through the opening, light from the artificial stars that humanity had created. And through that light came the human fleet. The ships that emerged were unlike anything the galaxy had seen. They moved without visible engines. They changed direction instantly, without slowing down. They were beautiful and terrifying, covered in patterns of light that seemed to pulse with life. There were only 50 human ships facing 12 battle fleets. The alien commanders felt confident in their numbers. They prepared to attack. The attack never happened. Every weapon on every ship in the 12 fleets suddenly stopped working. Power systems failed. Engines went dead. Communication arrays fell silent. Within seconds, the combined military might of the Concordance was floating helplessly in space. A human ship moved among the drifting vessels. It was smaller than the others, elegant and swift. A message came from this ship, broadcast to every disabled fleet. This is Admiral Marcus Chun of the Human Defense Force. Your weapons have been disabled. Your ships are not damaged. Your crews are not harmed. We could have destroyed you. Remember that we chose not to. Remember what mercy looks like. The hole in space remained open. Through it, the alien crews could see the quarantine zone. They could see the new stars burning. They could see human colonies on worlds that had been frozen and dead. They could see what 50 years of focused determination had created. We are sending repair drones to restore your ships, Admiral Chun continued. You will be able to return home in a few hours. When you get there, tell your leaders what you saw today. Tell them that humanity is not asking for permission anymore. Tell them that everything has changed. The human fleet did not attack. They did not threaten. They simply waited as their drones repaired the disabled ships. Then, one by one, the alien fleets jumped away to deliver their reports. The galaxy would never be the same. And in the Great Hall of Concordance Station, the quorum speaker waited for the humans to arrive. It knew they would come. It knew that the old order was ending. It just did not know what would replace it. The human ships appeared above Concordance Station without warning. There was no hyperspace signature, no indication that they were coming. One moment the space around the station was empty, and the next moment 100 vessels hung in the void like stars that had decided to visit. The station's defense systems activated automatically. Weapons powered up. Shields came online. 1,000 warnings flashed across control panels as the station prepared to defend itself against the impossible fleet. Then every defense system shut down. Not destroyed, just turned off, as if someone had found the master switch and flipped it to the off position. The station's commanders stared at their dead consoles in disbelief. A message arrived from the lead human ship. Ambassador Vasquez requests an audience with the Galactic Council. She will arrive in 30 minutes. Please prepare the Great Hall. The Council had no choice. They could not stop the humans from entering. They could not fight back. They could only watch and wait as a small shuttle detached from the human fleet and glided toward the station's docking bay. Elena Vasquez walked through the crystalline corridors of Concordance Station for the second time in her life. She was older now, nearly 150 years old, but human medicine had kept her strong. Her hair was white, her face was lined with age, but her eyes were the same calm brown they had always been. Beside her walked Admiral Chun and Director Tanaka, who had insisted on being present for this moment, despite her own advanced age. Behind them came a small group of human diplomats and scientists. They were not armed. They did not need to be. The Great Hall was different from how Elena remembered it. The same crystalline walls rose toward the impossibly high ceiling. The same tiers of seats surrounded the central floor. But the attitude of the aliens watching her had changed. 50 years ago, they had looked at her with amusement and contempt. Now they looked at her with fear. The quorum speaker waited at the highest point of the hall, just as it had before. The ancient being showed no emotion on its metal and crystal face, but Elena could sense its uncertainty. For millions of years, the speaker had guided the Concordance. It had seen species rise and fall. It had always known what to do. Now it was facing something it had never encountered. A species that had broken all the rules and won. "Ambassador Vasquez," the speaker said, "you have returned." "I told you I would find our own way," Elena replied. "I was not bluffing." The hall was silent. 4,000 species watched and listened. Many of them remembered the day when humanity had been rejected. Some of them had laughed when the humans walked out. Nobody was laughing now. "You have demonstrated impressive technology," the speaker acknowledged. "You have shown that you can disable our fleets without causing casualties. But power alone does not earn a place in galactic civilization. The Concordance was built on rules, on order, on stability." Elena nodded. "And where did those rules lead?" "To a galaxy where species are locked away because they are different. To a civilization that fears change so much that it crushes anything new. Your stability is just another word for stagnation." "You speak of change," the speaker said. "What change do you propose?" Elena reached into her jacket and pulled out a small crystal. She placed it on the ancient podium at the center of the hall. The crystal lit up, projecting a holographic display that everyone in the hall could see. "We call it the Open Star Compact," she said. "It is a new alliance, open to every species that wants to join. Every member gets an equal vote, regardless of age or power or genetic makeup. Every member gets access to human technology, including stellar ignition. No species will ever be locked away again." The holographic display showed a map of the galaxy. Points of light marked the species that had already agreed to join the compact. There were dozens of them, including several former Concordance members who had grown tired of the old system. "You are asking us to dissolve the Concordance," the speaker said. "No," Elena replied. "We are offering you a choice. You can join the compact as equal members. You can keep the Concordance if you prefer, but you will no longer control the galaxy. Or you can try to fight us, but we both know how that would end." She let the words hang in the air for a moment. "The age of quarantines is over. The age of judgments is over. The galaxy is changing whether you want it to or not. The only question is whether you will be part of that change." The speaker was silent for a long time. The ancient being had guided the Concordance through countless crises. It had outlasted empires and survived wars that had burned across entire star systems. But it had never faced a challenge quite like this one. Finally, it spoke. "And if we refuse? If we reject your compact and choose to remain as we are?" Elena smiled. It was the same smile she had given 50 years ago, the one that made aliens uncomfortable because they could not read its meaning. "Then you will spend the next 1,000 years watching from the outside." You will see the compact grow while the concordance shrinks. You will see species that you dismissed as primitive rise to power. You will see the galaxy light up with new stars, new technologies, new ideas. And you will know that you could have been part of it. She turned to leave, just as she had 50 years ago. But this time, she paused at the door and looked back. "We are not here for revenge," she said. "We could have come with weapons and destroyed everything you built. Instead, we came with an invitation. That is the difference between us. You saw our differences and decided we were dangerous. We see your differences and decide we want to learn from you. The choice is yours." She walked out of the great hall for the second time. The council erupted into chaos behind her. Species that had been rivals for millions of years suddenly found common ground in their fear of humanity. Others saw an opportunity to escape the old order and join something new. The vote would take months. The debates would last for years. But Elena already knew the outcome. The concordance could not stand against the tide of change. Too many species wanted what humanity was offering. Too many had suffered under the old rules. The galaxy was about to enter a new age, and humanity would light the way. 100 years had passed since humanity walked out of the quarantine zone and changed everything. The galaxy that existed now was nothing like the galaxy that had rejected them. The Open Star Compact had grown beyond anything Elena Vasquez had imagined. Over 2,000 species had joined, attracted by the promise of equality and shared technology. Former Concordance members made up nearly half of the compact. They had watched humanity's rise and decided they would rather be partners than spectators. The stellar ignition technology had spread across the galaxy. Thousands of new suns burned in the darkness, warming worlds that had been too cold for life. Species that had been confined to single planets now lived on dozens of worlds, their populations growing under artificial light. The galaxy was brighter now, literally and figuratively. On the planet called New Harmony, a young historian named Sarah Chun prepared for the anniversary celebration. She was a descendant of Admiral Marcus Chun, though she had never met him. He had died 40 years ago, surrounded by family, content in the knowledge that humanity had found its place among the stars. Sarah walked through the Hall of Memory, a massive building that held the records of humanity's journey. Holographic displays showed the timeline of events, the rejection at Concordance Station, the 50 years of secret development, the breakthrough of stellar ignition, the confrontation with the alien fleets, and finally the formation of the Open Star Compact. She stopped at the section dedicated to Elena Vasquez. The old ambassador's image smiled from 100 photographs. There were recordings of her speeches, transcripts of her negotiations, and personal letters she had written to friends and family. Elena had lived to see the compact reach its 100th member species before dying peacefully at the age of 203. "She was remarkable," said a voice behind Sarah. She turned to find a Veluxy standing there. The alien had blue scales and 3 eyes that blinked in a wave pattern. Its name was Crix 12, a descendant of the astronomer who had first noticed humanity's new stars. "My ancestor thought humans were boring," Crix said. "Just another primitive species waiting to die." He was wrong. Sarah smiled. "We surprised a lot of people. That is what I find most impressive," Crix continued. "The Concordance had rules about species like yours. Aggressive, unpredictable, genetically diverse. By their standards, you should have been a threat. Instead, you became a gift." They walked together through the hall, past displays showing the current state of the galaxy. The Concordance still existed, though it was a shadow of its former self. Only about 300 species remained in the old alliance, stubbornly clinging to the ways of the past. They controlled a section of the galactic core, refusing all contact with the compact. "Do you think they will ever join?" Sarah asked. "Perhaps," Crix said. Change is difficult for beings who have lived the same way for millions of years. But their children will see the new galaxy and want to be part of it. That is how change works. It is slow, but it is certain. The celebration that night was held under an artificial sun. It was one of the first that humanity had created, still burning steadily after a century and a half. Billions of beings watched as representatives from every compact species gathered to mark the anniversary. The main speech was given by the current human coordinator, a woman named Yuki Tanaka Ase. She was a direct descendant of Director Tanaka, named in honor of the scientist who had made everything possible. She stood on a platform that floated above the crowd, her voice carried to every corner of the massive gathering. 100 years ago, my ancestor lit the first artificial star, she said. She did it because the galaxy gave humanity no other choice. We were trapped, rejected, and expected to die quietly in our corner of space. Instead, we decided to burn. The crowd listened in silence. Humans and aliens stood together, united in memory of what had been accomplished. But the stars we created were never meant to be weapons, Yuki continued. They were meant to be gifts. Light for those who lived in darkness. Warmth for those who had known only cold. Hope for those who had been told they were not good enough to join galactic civilization. She gestured to the gathered crowd. Look at what we have built together. 2,000 species, sharing knowledge and resources, exploring the galaxy side by side. We have discovered wonders that no species could have found alone. We have solved problems that seemed impossible. We have become something greater than any of us could have been separately. The crowd cheered. Voices from 100 different species mixed together in celebration. The Galactic Council told us we were not worthy, Yuki said. They tried to lock us away. They expected us to accept their judgment. Instead, we walked away and lit the stars on fire. And now, 100 years later, the entire galaxy burns with the light of our determination. She raised her hands to the artificial sun above. This is what humanity learned in the darkness. Not hatred. Not revenge. We learned that if you push people into a corner, they will find a way out. We learned that the greatest power in the universe is the refusal to give up. We learned that when someone tells you something is impossible, they are just telling you that they have stopped trying. The celebration continued late into the night. Species that had once been enemies now danced together. Scientists from across the compact shared discoveries. Children played games that mixed traditions from 100 different worlds. Sarah Chun stood at the edge of the gathering, watching the stars. Some of them were natural, born billions of years ago in clouds of gas and dust. Others were artificial, created by human hands and shared with the galaxy. From where she stood, it was impossible to tell the difference. That was the point, she realized. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had not replaced what existed. They had simply added to it, lighting new fires in the darkness, making room for more life and more hope. Somewhere out there, on the edge of explored space, new expeditions were pushing forward. They carried the technology to ignite stars and the knowledge to build new civilizations. They were humans in Veluxy and Keth and a dozen other species, working together toward a future none of them could imagine. The Galactic Council had spoken all those years ago. They had told humanity to know their place. Humanity had listened. Then they had made a new place, brighter than anything the galaxy had ever seen. And now the light they had created was spreading, star by star, world by world, across the endless darkness of space. It would never stop. It would never fade. Because that was what humanity did. They burned. And they made sure the universe burned with them.